Alright, so I turned off my video, but now I've turned it back on. Let's make this buff. I was gonna make this buff effect. It's just gotta make somebody invulnerable. Didn't spec that out yet. So basically this buff effect is gonna have a constructor here. And a lot of times when I have something that makes a buff, I want to have sort of the alias ID on the buff, which I guess points out actually, it could be a good reminder if we're consistent. So if I was going to call that alias ID, I should probably call the abilities constructor alias ID also. But the buff sometimes takes alias ID, and sometimes it takes other stuff on top of that. Now it kind of looks like we didn't even implement can deactivate, so maybe I don't have to implement can deactivate myself yet, I suppose. That's sort of interesting. Alright, we'll see about that one. But we have this create method, and so maybe it doesn't take anything else. Maybe it just returns itself. And I think that should be a pretty straightforward one. We pretty much just allocate the same type of buff on the alias ID. Generally, the most important thing then with the buff timed is going to be we'll have a onBuffAdd method, which basically is what happens when this buff is added to a target unit. And of course, I am not making this name up now. This is a name that already exists inside of buff timed as part of its API. So the fact that I'm specifically named it onBuffAdd means it's just going to work by default. I think pretty much all we want to do there is set unit invulnerable on the target unit. Set that to true, and then method onBuffRemove takes unit target, returns nothing, and method this is going to set unit invulnerable to false. Now it is kind of an interesting problem. Instead of setting invulnerability, when I was doing Devotion Aura, and I had this in sort of an earlier version of Devotion Aura, and I think this was missed, and I was trying to record that last night and I missed my recording. We kind of dropped off. But one of the contributors to Warsmash created this concept for essentially like stat modifiers. And so you can sort of allocate it once with the buff and then have your stat modifier sort of add and remove to the unit and then call some function to sort of recompute the state on the unit. And the sort of downside of that is that by adding and removing these stat modifiers like that, in my mind, it almost seemed like the system was maybe too complicated, but it has the upside that it handles stacking. So if you have, a whole bunch of buffs, if you had a unit who cast Divine Shield twice or something, and when the first one expires and the second one is still active, it wouldn't like set invulnerable false, where then the second one was supposed to still be active, and so it shouldn't have set invulnerable to false. So you could picture we might want to have basically something like these sort of non-stacking stat buffs, and I thought there was going to be a concept, and I think maybe I didn't bring it over here into the universe of available Jass functions, where in the Java, as well as non-stacking stat buff, there was also, he made something called like stat buff type, just maybe stat buffs, just state mod buffs, something like that. So the state mod buffs, I think, are the one that can actually just modify invulnerable but stack up when it does it. And so it's a little bit unfortunate that I didn't just like make that into some kind of thing that exists in the universe of Jass functions. So we probably want to add natives to allow us to basically interact with the state mod buffs. And again, I sort of disagree with naming these buffs. I might change the name of that, at least in like the Jass universe or something. I'd almost rather to just call them state mods. Basically, the idea is a buff as a concept in Warsmash is typically describing something that extends something that ultimately extends an ability. It's like an ability with no icon that we put on the unit, and maybe it shows one of those buff status icons. So for me, I prefer to do it that way, as that is what the word buff to me is going to mean. So I would probably not call the sort of stat mod buffs. I would probably just want to call them stat mods, and that might be something I might try to change in the future. But the concept of what they're doing, I think, is still fairly straightforward, and it would be invulnerable like this, except it would be properly stacking. So it's a little bit unfortunate that I didn't actually port those into something we can call, but for the time being, I guess we'll just start with, I mean, it's not any worse than the Divine Shield that was actually already in Warsmash, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, buff Divine Shield over here in Warsmash. This is pretty much that same idea. I guess it looks like maybe we also need to make, if we're actually just directly porting the Java here, there was is timed life bar, which I think is another thing basically from takes nothing, returns Boolean, from the API of buff timed. And again, these things I've tried to bring them over to the Jass almost exactly, so we just tell that to return false. Otherwise, it might show like the blue avatar bar kind of idea on his nameplate, which just doesn't need to be there for Divine Shield. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that'll just work. Maybe Divine Shield makes us invulnerable, but you know, if we have some other ability, you know, if your Paladin, I don't know, standing inside of Big Bad Voodoo or something, it would break, and then your Big Bad Voodoo idea would like turn him vulnerable again while his Divine Shield was still active, because we're not doing a stacking up and down kind of thing.
At your call.
So later on that'll probably want to be fixed, but oh, all right, it did not work at all. So then we get back to the debug thing. I'm going to say, why didn't it work? No such identifier source. It seems to be busted on. What is that? Oh yeah, okay. So in my other video where it didn't get recorded, I've been trying to work on Warsmash. So that's a red, or sorry, not Warsmash, Warstomp. So it's a red herring. Looking at Warstomp, we actually don't care about that, but we do care about Buff Devotion. So Buff Devotion failed to compile. This says failed to compile beneath line 12. Undefined function set unit invulnerable. That's what I did wrong. Okay, so it's supposed to be invulnerable, and I put invulnerable. All right, well that makes sense. And I only did it once. Apparently the second time I did it right. That would do it. All right, let's see. Invulnerable.
I am not afraid.
Oh, I know when this is going to fail. Wait a minute. Yeah, I don't think... Okay, so... What I didn't do right, the ASDF, this is, you know, I was kind of specking out the idea of what I wanted to do, but now we want this to be more specific. We want to do get buff ID and have that really, you know, just get the ID and put that into the buff. That's probably what that was. I didn't check the debug output, but I'm guessing. Okay, cool. So here's my Paladin. Oh, no, it still doesn't work. Alright, debug output. What do we got? We gotta ignore the stupid war stomp thing. Set unit invulnerable. Really? Alright, I'm gonna search for this function. Pretty sure it's defined in common J. No? Invulnerable? Isn't that literally what I was doing in Devotion? It was like, set unit invulnerable. Oh, okay, never mind. It has to be capitalized. That's right. I'm getting used to these method names where I was using a different paradigm. Yeah, that's probably it. Let's see here. I bet it's about to get fixed. Need a little bit of a snack while it loads. Cool. Okay, so here's my loading bar. Got set unit invulnerable. I bet now it'll work.
At your call.
Let's see, okay. Oh, no, it did not work. Okay, why did it not work this time? Define function get buff ID. Oh yeah, okay, so the auras, we're getting buff ID from the definition of auras, because auras are all assumed to have a buff, but this thing doesn't. This uses buff ID, which is a variable I defined, and I need to just use the variable. The other option would, of course, be if I made an accessor method to get it, but that makes sense. Gotta fix that. Here we go. Let's try it again. No, it'll probably work this time. I'm gonna let a bite of my yogurt while it loads. Cool. Okay, so we're loading in. Got buff ID. I'm guessing this is gonna work. Oh, alright, well it worked, it added the buff, and then the buff instantly disappeared. So I don't think we properly set the buff duration. that makes sense. Actually allocating to the super type here. So this points out, I think Warsmash is failing to check the number of arguments passed to a function, which is kind of stupid. And that's something that I need to fix. So I guess it's using get duration, and get duration from the super type actually might exist. So if I say real duration, that was all missing in calling buff time. Buff time actually wants a duration. We could see this if we look at buff divine shield. It was passing alias and duration, even in the Java, and I was totally forgetting to do that. So cool. So down here, we're gonna say buff devotion dot create. We give it a buff ID. I think we might be able to just do get duration. I think that is actually defined in the Jass over here. We could probably check abilities common get duration. Get duration takes basically is where it's defined. Yeah, as an accessor method, it'll get the duration of a default implemented type of ability. Cool. So that makes sense. That also makes sense why it instantly disappeared. Having fixed that, it'll probably not instantly disappear.
I am not afraid.
Cool.
For my people.
Yeah, look at that. Now he's invulnerable.
You require my assistance?
We can't attack him. I guess I've noticed this. Instead of saying target is invulnerable, they just attack the ground behind him. So that's kind of an interesting Warsmash dilemma. Maybe that could be fixed later. I don't know. Maybe some abilities like Stormbolt. Nice to say.
Let me face the
Yeah, okay. It says must target enemy unit.
It
Anyway, you can see he became vulnerable again when the buff disappeared. So that seems to work. But one addition I could do is to say that we noticed, I don't know if anyone was paying attention to this, but if I make the ability considered instant instead of no target in my set of ability defaults, I'm pretty sure that should fix it so that you can cast it while walking, which is kind of a nice convenience. There's a few abilities in the game that sort of want to do that, where like if your guy's busy, he's got a set of orders queued up, he's going to run around or something, and you click the button, we don't actually want to interrupt what he was doing. We just want it to be something instant. So I use the word instant for that. Maybe that's a little bit confusing because I know some of the sort of Blizzard Activision universe maybe just used that to mean something that had no target, but now you can see he can turn invulnerable while he's moving. Apparently I can also spam casting this and the instant ability doesn't apply the cooldown. So that's broken.
For my people.
Yeah, I guess we should fix that. That doesn't seem to be how that should be. Alright, so in my default library, ability instant, ability spell instant. Yeah, okay. Apparently we just call do effect, and we don't start the cooldown, which is interesting. So basically, there's a subsection of these things. I pretty much want to copy all of that. Where it's possible that we charge the mana, that fails, and then we put an error. Then we end our check. So yeah, basically I should have put that in here, I think. And seems like, you know, there's a couple changes I have to make here because this was inside of a more complex thing that had a reference to its ability, which we don't have to have. This is going to be just do the caster. There's no source ability. Put the caster here. Do that. Maybe I'm done. Let's see if it just works. Time to find out. Probably not. It's loading. Let's see where we're at. Cool, here's my guy. We'll cast this ability thing. Oh yeah, look at that. He's down to 470 mana, burned out 20 mana, and now we can't click it again. But it's still instant, so it's sort of fixed. Apparently that was just missing in my instant abilities. So these things are kind of a very recently created template system for how to do that. Cool. If I level it up, it should probably last a lot longer.
It shall be done.
Have a shorter cooldown.
As you wish. It shall be done.
Well, now once this cooldown finishes. But yeah, so it seems like we got Divine Shield. I think that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll come back another day and make another one. Let's see. Oh, here we go.
It shall be
Actually, I
done.
can't really tell if the cooldown is shorter, but I think it should be.
It shall be done.
I would expect it probably
As
is.
you wish.
Duration's
It shall
probably a
be
lot
done.
longer. Maybe the
It shall
duration
be
just
done.
increases and the cooldown doesn't. I kind of forget.
For honor. For honor.
So anyway, yeah, it seems like it worked. It's kind of fun. And now we learned about the difference between extending ability spell instant and ability spell no target in my set of defaults. So that's kind of fun. Hope you guys have a good one.